so happy together or not. Maybe. Maybe two together or not together enough. I don't know. Let's see how together they can be. Starting with the IMDb plot. Years into their relationship, Tim and Millie find themselves at the crossroads as they move to the country. With tensions already flaring, an encounter with an unnatural force threatens to corrupt their lives, their love, and their flesh. All right, so maybe not so together, or at least not to start. Yeah, it's all about being together. So, yeah, this is a new film out here. So, I'll try to keep it this spoiler free as possible. There is some twists and turns to come. So try to leave that out as much as maybe I want to mention some things, but I'll try to leave that out. I will say here before I even get into this, this is a movie that's just getting a big push. As far as promote horror, I've been sent all kinds of information and the clips and just all kinds of reminders of the film coming and so forth. So I'm really doing a lot to push this movie out there and so forth. I've shared a lot. Shared some weird video the other day. But, I think if you kind of, see any of the trailer or see, bits of it or kind of any of the buzz from it or whatever, you kind of gathering what you might expect in it. I would certainly think, this is a movie that maybe horror fan. I'll be interested to see really, what the first weekend numbers are for it. Obviously, it's not going to be, I don't think a huge thing, but, if it gets decent numbers for horror, I'll be interested, just because, like I said, it seems to be getting a big push, and so forth, and definitely, if you see any clips of it or whatever, and you're kind of into that kind of horror, it certainly gives you, maybe a little bit of reason to want to see the film. And kind of what I mean by that is body horror. If you're really clueless and don't know anything about the movie, before I get into this, it is, the horror really in this movie is body horror. And so obviously, that's been kind of a theme here, recently with horror. We've seen several movies go the body horror route and do different things. I would say for the most part, these films have been decently successful. I think horror fans have liked them for the most part. The Substance, it was The Substance, I think. Obviously, fantastic, crazy film. Hopefully I got that name right. I'm getting my movies mixed up all the time. Anyway, the one with Demi Moore, that's the one I'm talking about. Anyway, body horror has been kind of a thing that I think, some filmmakers have kind of, gone to and done different things with recently. So this is another one that's really the horror of this movie that we're looking at. So if you're kind of into that or intrigued by that or whatever, if that's kind of your horror, this movie might be of interest to you. I would say, another thing to say before I get into the movie is, as I'm kind of talking about, the push for it and the marketing for it, on one of the I guess the poster or pictures, whatever, it says, best horror film of the year, obviously by a certain outlet, and that's not strange to see. We see that from time to time, and I only mention it because I saw someone else comment about it on Twitter the other day, and I kind of feel the same way. Like I obviously you're of your opinion and whatever, and you can say it and whatever, but I always, I don't like that necessarily, and that doesn't necessarily make me want to watch the movie anymore. Obviously, as someone who reviews movies and I've come to you guys all the time, and from time to time, as I go through the year, I'm thinking of a top 10 list and whatever, and if I see a movie that I'm really blown away, I'll sometimes tell you guys, at the end of the review or some point in the review that this most likely is going to be up there for me. This is it. I'm pretty sure, with the coffee, I think it was last year, the coffee table, when I did that review, I was pretty sold on, I was not going to like any other movie more. So, it didn't, I could have definitely seen another movie that I liked more. But I was pretty sold on it. So obviously, again, it is your opinion, but I don't like that necessarily, and that doesn't necessarily mean that I want to see the movie anymore. And plus, I always find that kind of, like I said, you obviously change your mind, blah, blah, but, that's always, we're in July now, as I do this review, and, we still have months of horror to go. So, you should kind of disclaim that with best horror of the year up to this point or something like that. I don't know. Obviously, that could have been taken from a quote and maybe more explanation to it, which is fine. But I don't know. I kind of agree. I don't necessarily like that on the poster or whatever. If you say that it's a fantastic movie, great movie, whatever, blah, blah. Even it probably, they're not gonna say probably, but I would be more comfortable with that. But anyway, it also, to me, it kind of sets the bar a little high. If you take it to heart, I think the horror fans are kind of keen, and ones that watch a ton of horror are kind of keen to best horror movie or whatever. Maybe that is to someone who is looking for a horror movie to watch, but doesn't typically watch a lot of horror, might see best horror film of the year. Okay, so I'll put this on because it says it's the best. So, I would think that that's the way it goes, or hope so. Anyway, that's an opinion. And I think I'm going to share one more opinion of stuff here, as I kind of get into this on. So, yeah, here it comes. So yeah, let's get into the movie a little bit here. So yeah, we get introduced to this couple early on, and a quick dive, or not a huge dive into it, but a little bit about their relationship early on. It is a little weird or whatever. Things don't seem to be going perfectly, and now they've decided to kind of move. And they're in a new setting, in a new area. I think they're also, even though they're together, they're both in a little bit different place in their lives. She's taking on, with this move, a new job, and trying to make the best of that, and kind of get settled in that way. Where he might be struggling a little bit in what he's doing. He, I believe, is a musician or trying to be in a band or something like that. And he's, trying to kind of work that out and kind of get through that. And, he's a little bit struggling with that, or at least that's kind of the vibe you kind of get. So, they might be having some issues within their relationship, and, they might be also in different places and where they're going personally in their lives and in their adventure of life and so forth. But they decide, one day to kind of explore their new area, explore the countryside, and kind of as a bonding kind of thing as well as so forth. So none of them, neither of them seem, used to the country or whatever, but they're going to go kind of exploring in kind of this forest-like, atmosphere. It starts raining, and long and behold, he falls in a hole. She tries to save him. They both fall in a hole and end up spending the night there. There's some weird kind of stuff to see in this cave and so forth. And it doesn't take long before, you kind of see, where this film might be going. I think, what I left out is you do get a scene early in the movie to kind of set the stage of where the movie is going. So you know where it's going. I'll leave that for you guys to see. Definitely sets the stage. But then, when they fall in the hole, this kind of sets the stage for them, I should say, for what's to come for them. So, they don't really know it at the time. They kind of just, not laugh it off, but, they just move on from it. Obviously, it was a tough outing or whatever. Didn't necessarily bring them any closer together, or make them either of them any happier because they ended up spending the night in the cave. Uh, but they come out of it and so forth, and then start to go about their lives. And um, obviously, because of that and because of where they landed and so forth, and because of some other things, um, there's some mysterious force that is going to now try to bring them together and bring them together literally, not this friend that comes and it's like, your best friend is like, hey, you need to work on your relationship, give him another chance, blah blah, and that kind of thing. No, some force is actually literally trying to merge them, or stick their bodies together. And it kind of starts with him, like you kind of see it where he has moments where when he's away from her, like he just feels this pull, or he becomes almost like drained, like I'm not with her, and it's really affecting him. Obviously, when you're with somebody, you miss them, you want to be with them and so forth. Especially if you're really truly in love. I mean, these, they're in love, but they're having their tough time. But I think early on, especially when you're younger, you always want to be with the person and so forth, and sometimes it's too much, but it's kind of like that, but literally. So very interesting scene early on. He's the kind of, she leaves and he's in the shower, and she's kind of going down a road, and kind of as she's turning in different directions, he's being kind of banged around the shower, in different directions. So kind of an interesting moment there, just to kind of tell you, to show you, what, the strength of this pull and so forth. So yeah, it kind of starts with him first, and kind of leads to that, she just thinks he's being awkward. What the hell is wrong with him? Is he sick? What the hell is his problem? And so forth. There's also, things going on in his mind, and I didn't quite get whether he, came into this relationship. I mean, he had some other issues, or not. He does talk about something weird with his father, or whatever. So, I don't know, if that also, kind of played into, why he was kind of picked first or whatever. I wasn't really sure about that, but to me, after a point, it's whatever, and we're moving on. It's not as important as where we're going. So then later on, it's going to kind of, take on with her too. Then, it's going to move to her, and move to her wanting, to be with him. There's going to be scenes where basically you see them on opposite ends, and they're just kind of, coming together. They're fighting it, they're grabbing onto stuff, trying to hold on, twisting and turning and all this kind of stuff. But they're going to, they're going this way, and they're trying to fight it. And you'll see that as the movie kind of goes on, they kind of get stuck a little, and then they'll unstick themselves, and then unstick themselves. So the movie's gonna kind of mess with you, as that goes along. It's obviously going to get a little bit worse, as the movie goes on, because the pull is going to just get greater and greater, as time goes on here. And then there's going to reach a point where they give you a little more. Obviously, it's going to be revealed a little bit, of what is going on here, why things are happening the way it is, and so forth. Obviously, I'm going to leave all that out. I don't want to spoil any of that for you guys. I will give them credit, because there's one thing that I didn't see. It's a little bit of a twist in the story. Maybe, others will pick up on it. As I kind of think about it, as I'm saying this, I kind of think that, maybe, I should have known, but I didn't know that they were going to go to that full extent. But, maybe there's a hint there or two. But yeah, I'll kind of leave that at that. I don't want to blow anything for you guys. But yeah, as the movie goes on, that's kind of the thing. can they stop this from going on or not? They will figure out kind of, why this is happening to them, but, can they stop it? And, obviously body horror of it, again, that's why we're here. That's kind of why we're really watching this movie, from a horror standpoint. I would say they made it, they did it pretty well. They made it pretty freaky. When they kind of get connected. I'm sure there's one scene in particular. I'm not going to go through each and every one of their connections. I'm sure there's one, and I'll just say, I guess it was in a bathroom. And for those of you who watch the film or will watch the film and so forth, that's the scene I'm kind of referencing here. I think, as that scene starts to happen and so forth, maybe things run through your mind, and then you're like, okay, or maybe if you're a certain individual, maybe you thought of that before, and then here it is, and you're kind of like, oh, okay, this is interesting. But yeah, they did kind of go there, and it was kind of interesting. I guess it could have been worse, but I guess they made it through, so okay. But yeah, so there are scenes where you are going to see them kind of merge together and then kind of try to get out of it. Kind of I referenced, I wanted to say something else, and here's what I was saying besides the marketing early on that I rambled about. Is kind of moments in horror where you just the movie is horror, you want horror, and sometimes you don't get all of the, obviously, okay, I just had to double check, but obviously this movie's rated R. But, sometimes, I think, at least from my standpoint, I know not every horror fan is into the blood and guts, and not every fan needs the blood and guts. Obviously, I love blood and guts. Obviously, you have body horror here, so you have an excellent chance to kind of do some really freaky things and, have some bloody moments, if you really want it. But there's a scene where their arms kind of get together, and they're fighting it, and it's kind of they get it to a point where they've got to kind of stop at that level, and she decides to get this kind of cutting saw or whatever, and she's gonna just cut through, the stickiness of their arms. They've kind of pulled away a little bit. So there's a little bit of a stretch there. And she's decided, hey, we either do this now or we're not going to be able to do it. So I'm going to cut through this. And, from a horror standpoint and from someone like me who's watching and, wants the blood and guts and likes this kind of thing, whatever, I'm glued, I'm watching, I'm like, yes, here we go. We're going to make the most of this, we're being stuck together thing here, a little bit freaky, but, now we're going to cut away, this is good. And, yeah, they do a great job of driving the tension, suspense of the moment, and then, the emotions of each of them, she's for it, he's kind of like, and then, before, then they're okay, let's do this, and then she does it, but then, it's one of those times where she does it, and then when she kind of goes to do it, you're on the, at least for me, I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm like, okay, I want to see this, and then, they're apart, and we see them apart, and you're like, wait a minute, what the hell? Like, I want to see that, like, cut through it. I want to see blood fly up in the air. I want to see them scream. That's, the point of the movie, that they're together and now they're trying to separate and let's see it. We've seen them, once or twice already kind of pull apart, and the pain of that and a little bit of blood. But this is a big moment. I mean, she's cutting away at him. Let's see, some blood. Let's see their reaction. Let's see them, maybe fall on the floor or scream or whatever. And instead, we get that pause, and then they're both, on two different ends of the floor there. And I'm just like, why? This is, to me, it's okay, we can argue it different ways. You can argue it, where, for the fans that don't necessarily need all the blood and guts, they're fine with it, okay, they separate, and blah, blah, blah. For the people that might want a little bit more blood and guts, here's your opportunity, and you just didn't deliver. To me, again, you fail at being a horror. Yeah, there's the horror of being stuck together, and that's all terrific and good. But by that time in the movie, you've already done it a couple of times. So, it's kind of one of these movies where, you kind of get stuck in the main thing of the movie happening, several times over. And it's how many times are you going to do it before you kind of get to the point, or before, maybe it gets too old for the audience. But here, other times you just basically kind of pulled away at it. Here now you're bringing in an object to really kind of separate and kind of, get a really painful, even more painful moment than maybe we've already seen, and you just don't show it to us. So, I can argue, maybe it is because of the rating. Maybe they can't show it. They don't want to put that level of blood. Maybe they want to save the blood level for, other stuff that's happening in the movie. But I always think that that's just a shame when we get moments like that. It is a horror movie, let's do the horror. Let's do the horror and not, shy away from it. Yeah, you have to have your rating, you have to show it in the theater, blah, blah, you have to have an audience. You can't make it so that it is so bloody and blah, blah, that it can't be shown in the theater or no one can see it and blah, blah. And, I don't know, it is annoying at times. And I feel that, it's almost like horror should get a pass. Like, it is horror. If you go to see horror, it should be understood. Like, there's horror in the movie, especially some, and they should just be allowed to just do it because it's horror. Obviously, you're not going to see that in, a comedy or something else. So, if it's just raunchy comedy, of course, rated R, and beware of bad words and whatever. But, this is horror. Come on, just I don't know. As soon as that other things happen in this movie, but that kind of, moment, just kind of grabbed me. And I was just like, as she was doing it, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to get to see this. And then I didn't. And I was kind of like, come on. So yeah, that was a little disappointing of a moment there. So yeah, that's my little side speech about, come on, let's just let the horror be the horror. Anyway, as far as the movie itself, again, I liked where it went. In kind of, how it ended and how they played the ending, and so forth. Again, there's, a twist or turn that kind of happens towards the end of the movie. And, I guess maybe I was so perturbed by not seeing that arm get cut that maybe I lost kind of track of seeing, what I should have seen was coming. But yeah, I guess I epically failed at that. So when it happened, I was kind of like, oh, okay. So yeah, I guess it, was a little surprise to me. Maybe for some of you'll get it and see it coming. I thought that maybe a little bit of really explaining, what was really happening. Like I said, the reasoning behind this all maybe should have been explained maybe in a different way, a little bit more. Maybe it was just me. Maybe I just missed it. I tell you guys all the time, sometimes I miss stuff. Stuff goes over my head. I don't know. I don't know. I felt we should have gotten, maybe a little something more. I mean, I get the general idea of it, but maybe something a little bit more. I will also say that yeah, the two actors here do a really good job. Obviously, crazy circumstances and so forth, but they do a really good job also, handling, especially when, things get weird and they're kind of, in those moments where they're, faced with coming, together and getting stuck together and so forth. The fear and the craziness and, as the intensity of the film kind of goes on and what's happening here, they do a really good job. But I don't know. There was also, some moments there in between where, I'm watching them, I guess, in moments where maybe, it wasn't so much about them being stuck together and it was mostly just a relationship or just things, weren't in scenes where they were, had anything to do with them kind of coming together. I don't know. Like, I kind of, I felt like I kind of exhaled and was just kind of like, this is any other movie, whatever, nothing special is happening. Maybe like, I don't know, like, I don't know if it kind of just wore on me. Like I said, it was interesting. It was fun to see, them kind of, the scenes where they're coming together. But, after it's done a couple of times, then it's kind of like, okay, I've seen that. What else do you have for me? I don't know. There was just something about it where, I kind of was looking at it like, I just, need something else to be going, or maybe they just needed to get to the part where they were explaining what the hell was really happening maybe a little sooner. The movie is not that long. I think I think I saw an hour and 40 minutes or so. So not overextended or anything like that. I don't know. I just would have wanted them maybe to get to that just a little bit quicker, or I don't know, maybe just remove something. I don't know, just something about it. Just I just remember there was a point where I was just like kind of like, what else is going to happen here? Like, I don't know, I need something else, or you need to move faster, or whatever. I mean, obviously the suspense of it is there, especially in moments where they're coming together. There's, like later on when they're both, when it's just one, it's one thing, but when they're both kind of like, they have it and here they come, that was a little bit more interesting, intense, and so forth as they're fighting it and so forth. And I can see it completely on the other end. If someone watching, watches this and says, hey, that was a little ridiculous, or in those moments where, they're both on two different ends and they're kind of, fighting that come together and they're doing all these kind of body twists and so forth. Maybe you didn't like that, or maybe you thought that was ridiculous. I could see that as well. Obviously, they're trying to drive up the tension in the moment, suspense in the moment, and when they kind of get closer, some scenes you kind of know, what is merging, and then other scenes, as they're kind of rolling, you don't know, how they're going to end up together. Obviously, I guess, as they kind of sit down and think about the movie and what they're going to do and whatever, I guess, there's different ways they could have merged them, and maybe more interesting ways they could have done it. Again, you had to kind of start simple so that they could unseparate early on, and then just make it more of a challenge as the movie went on. But yeah, and then again at the end of the movie, when they had choices to be made there too, in which direction they wanted to go with the movie and so forth, and the outcome there. And I thought, I guess I liked the direction they went and so forth, and I won't tell my reasons why, because I think that kind of gives away a little bit of it. But I liked the way it ended. I liked the twist. Again, maybe I was caught up on some other things that I probably should have seen that coming and didn't. But yeah, I think so. To kind of sum this up, best horror film of the year, I don't think so. A good horror film, yes. If you like body horror, good. The special effects were good. Like I said, I think, like in that one moment, I would have liked to see more, and they just didn't give me more in that scene. You could argue maybe they made up for it at other times, and yeah, I could give them that. And yeah, they could have done other things, but they did give us certain things, bathroom scene. So, we give them credit for that. So it's a little bit of a back and forth. But yeah, I don't, when the movie ended, I didn't get that feel like I get, with the feel of other movies that I'm like, wow, I was blown away. And for me to personally come here and say, hey, best horror film of the year, no, I'm not going to say that. A good horror film, if you're into body horror film, horror, that's your thing, definitely see. I think the movie in general, if you're a horror fan, is worth seeing. Like I said, two really good performances by the two main actors here. Definitely, it probably was not an easy thing to do. I don't know how they managed to do all the special effects and so forth of it. And definitely, just it did get, a level of craziness there. But I will also say that if you paid attention to some of the marketing of it, that may have ruined maybe a touch of it or two, with maybe one or two small things. But yeah, and I'm part of that, so I'm sorry. So, but yeah, so at the end of the day, I think I'm just gonna give this one 3.5 pools of blood. Um, you know, good, really good movie. Best, I don't think so. Not blown away with it. Um, but yeah, two really good performances and kind of good story to kind of go through here and so forth. I wish for maybe a different kind of outcome here or there, or explanations here or there, but um, you know overall I wasn't disappointed. Obviously, best horror film of the year. Yeah, I keep harking about it, but whatever. You kind of raised expectations, but again, I truly wasn't going into it thinking that. So I'm okay. Usually if I get my own expectations up and then it's a letdown, then that hurts a little bit more. Um, but yeah, so I think I'm going to go for 3.5 pools of blood and see what you guys think. So obviously, I've rambled on a lot and unpacked a lot about the movie and even a few other things within it. So I'll leave it at that. So horrorscorereviews.blogspot.com is where you can find all of my reviews, written and video. Certainly tons of video reviews, so you can like and subscribe and do everything else that everybody wants to do here on YouTube. If not, no worries, it is okay. I thank you for your time regardless. Twitter, Facebook information down below as well, so you can reach out to me there, talk about this movie, anything that I complained about in this thing, between the marketing and the horror and so forth. Definitely in the comment section as well, if you want to touch on those or touch on the movie, if you liked it, didn't like it. If it was the best horror film of the year for you, so be it. That is fine. That is fine. Everybody at the end of the year has their choice, and that's fine. It's your choice. So no, that's not an issue. So with that, I will catch you on the next review, horror fans.